You Owe Me One Universe by Chad Lucas. Chapter 10, Volcano, Ezra. The last week before the holiday break felt 3 months long. Everyone was hyper except Brian, who'd gone quiet since the basketball game. I wanted to ask if he was okay, but he'd made it clear he didn't like that question, and I didn't know how to bring it up without making him feel worse. And I kept seeing Victor and Colby everywhere, which felt awkward after my dream. I noticed Victor watching as Maddie and I put up flyers around the school for the talent show. And I noticed Maddie trying to melt his head every time she saw him. I tried not to get caught up in drama, but I was curious enough to ask Maddie about it while we were drinking hot chocolate at the mall after we went Christmas shopping. She frowned. Victor and Colby are jerks. That was the short version. The long version had more twists than one of those true crime podcasts my mom loved. Here was the medium version. Victor had spent the summer at his grandparents' house and ghosted Alicia. No texts, no calls, nothing. Colby and Gemma were already falling apart by mid-July. Colby's so full of himself sometimes, Maddie complained, which, true. And Gemma dumped him after he kept defending Victor. The whole thing just made me realize that dating in junior high is silly, Maddie said. Most boys are so immature. Except you, of course. I didn't mention how often I made butt jokes with my friends. Instead, I raised my hot chocolate. Thank you for recognizing that I'm a unicorn. But here's the more important question. Best Christmas song? Easy, Maddie said. All I want for Christmas is you. I shrugged. Solid choice, but I'm going with This Christmas by Donny Hathaway. It's from the 70s and is still a bop. Maddie wrinkled her nose. I don't know it. We must fix that immediately. Here. I gave her an earbud and introduced her to great music, which was one of my purposes in life. Finally, we got to break. The best part was Nat came to visit for a week. When Dad and I picked her up at the airport, she squealed and nearly tackled me in the arrivals area. Look at you, you're so tall. Is that a mustache? She poked at the almost invisible line of hair on my lip. I pushed her hand away and grinned. Good to see you, Nat. It was great having her home. On Christmas Day, after we opened presents and ate a big breakfast, we video called our oldest sister, Leela, who was in Ontario with her mom and her husband and their 4-month-old baby, Grace. Mostly we made silly faces at Grace. She was very cute. The next day, Nat and I had our Boxing Day movie marathon. We'd done it every second year when she spent Christmas with us. I'd invited Brian, Ty, and Kevin over too. I was glad Brian agreed to come and was both nervous and excited for Nat to meet him. Kevin and Brian showed up together, and I led them to the basement and introduced them to Nat. Brian waved. Hey. Nat smiled. Nice to meet you. I've heard lots about you both. You too, Kevin said. It sounds like you get all the credit for Ezra being so cool. Nat laughed. Absolutely. I rolled my eyes. All right, enough. Time to begin our formal program. Ty's coming later, so we can start without him. I swept my arm toward the TV. Our first selection is Sing Street, about a budding young musician who learns to follow his dreams. Gee, I wonder why you picked this one, Kevin joked. Shut it, Kev. I scooped up a piece of caramel corn from the bowl on the coffee table and tossed it at his head. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel inspiration stirring in your soul. So let's begin. I loved Sing Street. I'd seen it 3 times already, so I watched my friends as much as I watched the movie. Kevin was clearly into it, but Brian was so quiet. I knew he'd visited his dad in jail yesterday, and I imagined that would be a hard way to spend Christmas. But maybe it was a sensitive subject. He didn't look like he wanted to talk. He didn't touch the snacks, either. Ty showed up just as the movie ended. Sorry I'm late. Dad's family always gets together on Boxing Day, and I had to make an appearance. He plopped on the couch. It's classic. Uncle Weldon asks how basketball is going, then he tells me the same 3 stories from when he was in high school last century, and lectures me about how players were tougher back then. Then, when I offer to play him one-on-one, he mumbles about his bad knee, and my cousins crack up. I love it. Kevin scooped up more caramel corn. Roasting uncles is the best holiday tradition. I've been ragging on my uncle about his ratty high-waisted jeans since I was little. I think he wears the same pair every year just to bug me. We riffed on more weird uncle stories. Brian just sat there, and I remembered he didn't have much extended family. Not that he ever saw, anyway. I wondered if we were making him feel worse, so I changed the subject. So, goofy comedy or pure action? Those are our choices. I looked at Brian. You can pick, or we could go with something else if you want. He froze. Whatever. Comedy, I guess. Comedy it is. I loaded it up, and we laughed all the way through, except for Brian. After it was over, Ty turned to him. You're quiet, B. You all right? Brian looked pale. He swallowed. I'm super tired. I might be getting sick, actually. I should probably go home. The room went quiet. Brian looked so bummed. I wished I could make him feel better. You could chill in my room if you want, I said. I don't want to give you my germs. He slowly stood up. Do you want to ride home, Nat asked. No thanks. Maybe fresh air will help. Bye, everyone. He hurried for the stairs. I started to follow, then I remembered something in my room. I caught up just as he was pulling on his coat. I almost forgot. I got you a present. I handed him a gift bag. Merry Christmas. Brian blinked. I didn't get you anything. I wanted to, but he suddenly looked like he might cry. That's okay, I said. Honestly, it's nothing big. I just saw it and thought of you. He opened the bag. I'd bought him a t-shirt with a dancing hot pepper saying spicy and a cartoon speech bubble. This is... Brian trailed off. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. I hope you feel better soon. Text me when you get home. I tried to sound casual because Brian looked stressed. I hated that giving him a present made him think he was letting me down or something. Okay, bye. Then he left. As we started another movie, I kept glancing at my phone. Brian sent one text. Home. Thanks again. I waited for him to say something else. I didn't know why. We were all clearly distracted. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When the credits rolled, I turned off the TV. We have to help Brian. I think the holidays are making him sad. He does seem bummed, Ty agreed. No kidding, Kevin said. He didn't eat any cookies. No healthy, happy person can resist my cookies. I was glad they agreed with me. We need a plan. Ty, maybe we should take him out to play ball. We can get some guys from the team and play 3-on-3. Kevin, you could have him and Richie over to play video games. By the time Kevin's dad picked him up, we had a schedule to check in with Brian all week. I said goodbye to my friends and then warmed up some apple cider in the microwave. When I turned around, Nat was leaning against the kitchen island, twirling a strand of hair. What? I asked. She hesitated. It's sweet how you and your friends want to cheer Brian up. There was a but coming, I could tell. But, there it is. He might not want to do all those things. I rolled my eyes. Oh, yeah, we're kidnapping him and forcing him to do stuff he likes. We're absolute monsters. Nat only gave my joke a half-hearted smile. Just don't get your hopes up. He didn't seem keen on being social today. He wasn't feeling well. Nat twisted her hair. Do you know if he's seeing anyone, like a therapist or... I dropped my mug down on the counter hard enough that cider sloshed out. Geez, Nat, it's not like I asked when it's the last time he went to therapy. What are you getting at? Well, he seems like he might be depressed. He spent Christmas visiting his dad in jail. Of course he's bummed out. That's why I'm trying to cheer him up. Ezra, that's the thing. Maybe he's more than bummed out. The louder I got, the softer Nat spoke, which made me more irritated. You're a great friend, but if he's struggling with depression, that's not something you can fix. You can't put that kind of pressure on yourself. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Then I said everything, like a volcano bubbled up inside of me. You don't know everything, Nat. You saw Brian for like 3 hours on a bad day. You don't know him at all, and you hardly know me anymore either. Nat flinched. A voice in my head said stop, but it was no match for the volcano. You live 1,000 miles away, and we talk online, but that doesn't mean you know how I feel. Stop treating me like a little kid and mind your own business. Nat stood there, just blinking. For once, she didn't have a quick comeback. I kind of wished she did. I didn't know what to do now. The thing about letting out a volcano was it left your inside scorched. I'm tired, I'm going to bed, I announced before Nat could say anything. I grabbed my mug and hurried to my room. My electric guitar rested on my belly, unplugged, and I couldn't hear my muted chords as I strummed along to the song in my headphones. I trusted that my fingers were landing in the right places. I'd never hear if Nat knocked on my door. I couldn't decide if I wanted her to burst in and try to fix whatever just happened, or if I wanted her to leave me alone. I wasn't used to being this mad at her. I wished I could stop thinking about what she said. If he's struggling with depression, Brian would tell me if he was struggling, right? We tell each other stuff. Except I was remembering the things I'd kept to myself lately and the questions I hadn't asked. Maybe he did that with me too. I set my guitar down and turned to the internet to find out how to tell if an 8th grader was depressed. The more I read, the worse I felt. Every line in the list of symptoms landed like a dart in my chest. Loss of energy, changes in appetite, angry outbursts, social isolation. I thought about the past few weeks. Brian was almost as silent as last year, except for his swear fest in the middle of the game. He usually looked tired, and Kevin was right. He hadn't been eating. He left everything early. He didn't even want to be around us anymore. Maybe he was just sick, like he said. Maybe he was sad about the holidays. But what if it's more? What if Nat's right? It took enormous willpower to wait until 10 the next morning before I texted him. Hey, hope you're feeling better. Want to go to the library? The minute stretched by in silence. He didn't write back until noon. Sorry, still feeling like crap. Thanks, though. I started a few replies, but I couldn't find the right words. Is something bothering you? Want to talk? I could come over if... You'd tell me if you weren't okay, right? Someone knocked on my door. Are you decent? Nat asked. Just finishing some nude yoga. The joke came automatically, and Nat laughed. In that moment, I realized I wasn't mad anymore, and I was relieved she didn't seem mad either. Still, when I told her to come in, she closed the door and leaned against it, leaving most of the room and an awkward silence between us. She took a breath. Ezra, I'm sorry I blurted out. I didn't mean... No, it's okay. She bit her lip. You were right. I was? She crossed the room and sat beside me. I don't know Brian like you do. Maybe I jumped to conclusions, and you're not the cute little sixth grader you were when I moved out. Nat forced a smile. You're growing up. You're thoughtful and caring, and you've been doing fine without my advice. I miss you, that's all. Her voice wobbled at the end. When I responded, I could only whisper, I miss you too, Nat. She wrapped an arm around me, and I hugged her back. I was average height in my class, and I felt short next to Ty and Brian. But when Nat leaned against me, her head rested against my cheek. I'm proud of you, Ezra. Watching you with your friends, you're just yourself. It's great. Thanks for letting me hang out with you, she sighed. But I have to get going. Aren't you leaving tomorrow? I had to change my flight. There's a storm coming, and I have to work on the 30th. Dad's taking me to the airport in an hour. Oh. My mind filled with all the things we hadn't talked about yet. I still wanted her advice on so many things, while she was here, not a face on my phone. We went upstairs and ate lunch. Dad checked for airport-bound traffic updates on his tablet. When we said goodbye at the front door, Nat hugged me for a long time. I'm proud of you, Ezzy, she whispered. Remember, it's okay to think what you want sometimes. That was the second time she'd talked about what I wanted, and I wasn't sure what she meant exactly, but I didn't get to ask because she blew me one last kiss and slipped out the door. Chapter 11. Just do what you can. Brian. New Year's Day is the most useless of all holidays. It's hard to feel excited about new beginnings when everything's frozen and gray. I spent most of the day in bed, moping about how bleak my whole holiday break had been. No one should have to fake being happy on Christmas, but I tried, and so had Mom for Richie's sake. He was smart enough to see through us, but he'd faked it too. He didn't complain when we took him to visit Dad. I kind of wished he had. That would have felt more normal. Dad had greeted us with a big phony smile, and for an hour we'd play-acted like a normal family. Richie barely said a word, which was how I knew he was miserable, but he'd held it together until we got home. Then he burst into tears and ran into his room. 10-year-olds shouldn't cry on Christmas. I wished I could have comforted him, but Mom and I had fallen apart too. So that was Christmas. Sleep in heavenly peace or whatever. My gloom had been a giant cloud at Ezra's Boxing Day movie marathon until I couldn't take it anymore and bailed early. I felt awful for ruining one of Ezra's favorite days, especially when he'd gotten me a present and reminded me what a lousy friend I was. He, Ty, and Kevin texted me every day asking if I wanted to do something. I always sent the same reply, I'm not feeling great, sorry. It wasn't a lie. When school started back up on Tuesday, I showered, got dressed, and forced down a slice of toast. I reached the door and stared at my boots. That was when a picture of the day formed. The slow walk on frozen sidewalks, the noise of as 300 kids piled into the building, the hours droning by in classrooms that were too hot or too cold. I couldn't do it. I told Mom I felt sick, then I went back to my room. She tried talking to me, but I didn't come out. When she gave up, I heard Richie peppering her with questions. What's wrong with Brian? How come he gets to stay home? I put my pillow over my head. I tried again on Wednesday, but I started crying in the bathroom. On Thursday, I didn't get up at all. Somehow, it was 3 p.m. when Mom came in and sat on my bed. I must have fallen asleep, or maybe I'd zoned out all day. It all felt the same. I was supposed to be helping Mom and Richie, but I wasn't. I was making them worry. I was hurting them. I was wrecking all the progress I'd made. I'd even missed basketball practice, and Coach was probably going to bench me or kick me off the team. I was failing at everything, but I couldn't do anything about it. I was sinking into a hole. I made you a doctor's appointment, Mom said, and an appointment with Dr. Bender. Both are next Tuesday. That was less than a week away. The medical system never moved that fast, not for most people anyway. I pictured Mom pleading into the phone. Maybe she'd call their social worker for backup. I probably had a bright orange sticker on my file. This kid's been in care. His mom's been in the psychiatric hospital. Diagnosis, disaster waiting to happen. You're in a rough patch, Brian. It happens, but we'll get it sorted out. Mom tried to sound low-key, like my rough patch was a stomach bug or a sprained ankle. She spoke slowly, choosing words like they were jelly beans, and she was trying to avoid one that tasted like a sock. She leaned over and planted a kiss on my forehead. This won't last forever, I promise. An hour later, Richie plopped onto my bed, practically sitting on me. You have to get up tomorrow, he announced. No more staying in bed. I groaned and tried to roll away. He threw his weight across my chest. His face hovered over mine, so close our noses were almost touching. Tomorrow you get up. His breath smelled like peanut butter. He jabbed a finger in my forehead with each word. Promise me. I wanted to toss him on the floor, but my arms were pinned under my blanket. Get off, I growled. Not until you promise. Richie. Promise! Richie could be the most stubborn kid on earth. He got this look in his eye that meant, give me what I want or it's going to get messy. And right now, he wanted his brother out of bed. No, he needed it. Last June, when Dad left and Mom fell apart, all we had was each other. I couldn't crumble on Richie. I couldn't break down like our parents had. I couldn't do this to him. I couldn't. All right, I promise. He didn't move. You mean it? Richie! Mom came tearing in and yanked him off my bed. She marched him away, but my door was open and I heard her low, urgent tones. Richie's voice rose in reply. Then he stormed to his room and slammed the door. I mean it, I said to no one. I promise. Are you sure? Mom asked again as I zipped up my parka on Friday morning. I wasn't sure at all, but I had to do this for Richie and for me. She exhaled. Just do what you can manage. If you need to call me, I'll be fine, I said. I said it like I believed it. Kevin walked to school with me. He talked like it was a normal day, which helped to distract me. I made it to school without falling apart. Facing Ezra was harder because I knew he was worried, but he and Ty both greeted me with a fist bump and a simple hey. They were playing it casual too. That was good. I had PE first period, which meant I had to see Coach Williams. Might as well get that over with too. I approached him while my classmates were still in the locker room. Hey, Coach, I said. Sorry I've been missing practice. I haven't been at school all week. I haven't been feeling well. My stomach twisted as he looked me over. I was worried he'd be upset or he'd ask questions, but he didn't. That's okay, Brian. You can take it easy today. Just do what you can. I swallowed. Thanks, Coach. I muddled through a half-speed game of badminton with Ezra. Moving helped my head feel a little clearer, and the break from my fog carried me through French. Third period was math. After we settled, Mrs. Wooliver started handing out a quiz. My chest seized when she reached my desk. I struggled to force out the words. Mrs. Wooliver, I've been out sick. I'm behind. It's mostly a review from before the holidays, Brian. Just do what you can. She handed me a test and moved on. Mom and Coach Williams had both said the same thing. Just do what you can. 10 minutes later, I'd only written my name. These questions might as well be in hieroglyphics. This was a mistake. Papers rustled as everyone turned to stare. Ezra was wide-eyed. Apparently, I'd said that out loud. Mrs. Wooliver looked up. No talking. I dropped my pencil and put my head in my hands. I can't do this. Behind me, someone giggled. Ezra whirled in his seat. Shut up, he snapped. Mrs. Wooliver raised her voice. People, not another word. I gathered my binder, which was hard because my hands were shaking. My pencil rolled onto the floor and I left it there. My heart was racing and my eyes burned, and there was a good chance I was about to burst into tears. There was no way I was letting that happen here. I stood up. So did Mrs. Wooliver. Brian, I can't do this. My voice shook and everyone was staring, and I hated this, but I kept going because I needed to leave right now. You said do what I can, and I can't do anything. I'm sorry. Maybe she responded, but I couldn't tell because my ears started ringing as I bolted. 5 steps down the hall, I realized I wasn't going to cry. I was having a super massive panic attack. My heart raced, my lungs locked up, and my eyes went starry. Everything just disappeared. Hey, a voice said. Hey, Brian. The fog cleared slowly. I was on my side. I felt cold tile against my cheek and someone's hand on my shoulder. It was Victor. This had to be a dream, because I'd been in math and now I was on the floor and Victor was here and he was calling me Brian, not weirdo or freak or ghost. You blacked out for a second, Victor said. Don't move, okay? I'll go get. He didn't finish because Ezra tackled him. What did you do? Ezra shouted in Victor's face. His voice echoed down the hall. Classroom doors opened and teachers came running. This wasn't a dream. Reality rushed in as the hall filled with noise. Ezra was angrier than I'd ever seen him. It took 2 teachers to pull him off Victor. Then the guidance counselor, Mrs. Barton, was beside me asking questions, and too many people were talking, and it was all so much. Someone said ambulance. I sat up. My head swam, and Mrs. Barton told me to take it easy, but I slowly pushed to my feet. I didn't want an ambulance. I didn't want strangers prodding me and asking more questions. I wasn't going to the hospital. I just want to go home, I croaked. Mrs. Barton helped me to the office. I was still wobbly, and I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, but I could tell people were watching. I made it to the sick room and lay down on a cot before my last bit of dignity crumbled and I broke down and cried.